Are you ready for the season 5 of the Scale You podcast? It has now been almost 2 years since we started the Scale You podcast back in April 2024. And in those 2 years, we have been able to interview so many amazing business owners and founders and people who are doing a lot of amazing work that is essentially creating a lot of good and value in the world. In season 1, we interviewed a lot of founders who started their own business out of just seeing a sheer need in the market for what it is that they do, or by just sheer will of wanting to bring more value in the world one way or the other. In season 2, we interviewed a lot of digital nomads and how they're able to scale themselves even as they are working from different parts of the world. In season 3, we interviewed a lot of serial entrepreneurs, basic entrepreneurs who had 1, 2, 3, 5 different types of businesses and how they're able to scale themselves. And in season 4, we talked to a lot of amazing authors who scaled themselves, their voice, through, of course, the power of publishing their written word. Now, going into season 5, we are going to be interviewing and talking to a lot of agency service owners. Now, in the last year, we have moved also the Scale You podcast, basically entrepreneurs who started their own services. They either started as a freelancer themselves, or they basically just jumped into creating their own agency, but they're creating some sort of service and value into the world, and we'll basically be diving into how they're able to scale themselves. Aside from that being our theme for season 5, you guys are also going to be here now on the Scale You YouTube channel. If you guys are watching this, we basically created the Scale You YouTube channel in July of 2025, where we wanted to focus really more on content on business and AI and outsourcing and delegation. And essentially, this will also now be the new home for the Scale You podcast. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new episodes this season every Tuesday, and also our regular YouTube videos every Thursday. Now, for those who have no idea who I am, I'm not sure how long you guys have lasted through that whole intro without knowing who I am. My name is Lacaba Morales. I got married last May, and I run an executive assistant agency called 2XU, where a lot of our focus is giving a full service for entrepreneurs, mostly coaches and consultants, who want to be able to scale beyond themselves with an executive assistant and our Built For You OS, basically, for your business. And the biggest reason why we wanted to feature agencies for season 5 is mostly because last year on my main YouTube channel, I talked about how to start an agency, and that got the most engagement and the most questions. So what I've done is I gathered the questions that I got from that video into the questions that we will be asking a lot of these agency owners that we're going to be interviewing in the next couple of weeks. However, we'll of course start with a little bit of a self-interview episode of I'm going to dive into answering those questions myself, because I don't want anyone to go through something that I'm not willing to go through. Now, the first question is, what inspired you to start your own agency, and what were those early days like? And for me, I started 2XU in October of 2019. I was I think I just turned 24 years old at that time, and I got my very first client from someone who went through a workshop that we just did on how to start delegating and working with virtual assistants. And at that time, we were really more of just that, a virtual assistant agency. We had a couple of clients who started coming in from either the content here or by word of mouth. And at that time, it was really just me and a bunch of other virtual assistants, where they were working one-on-one with their client, but at the same time, like, I'm still the one managing both the client and the EA or the VA at that point. And it was basically just me and my co-founder, who's more of a consultant, I would run and ask him questions of like, hey, how do we do this? Like, what does this look like? And that was basically what those early days looked like. I remember I would work about 50 to 60 hours a week, mostly because I would be doing the YouTube content. I would be editing everything myself. I would be pushing them out on the YouTube channel. I was also doing a ton of workshops, speaking engagements, basically anything or anywhere where I could talk about 2XU, promote 2XU, talk about the business that we just started. I basically just took it, especially as going into the 2020 pandemic, which was crazy in itself, of kind of having to be forced to work from home. Even though I already worked from home, it was kind of just a weird thing to just kind of be forced to just be locked down. So that was kind of the start of 2XU, was kind of mostly me doing everything else until, of course, I hired my own very first virtual assistant as I started 2XU. Next is, what was the moment that I realized that the agency basically can now switch from survival mode to actually scaling or growing mode? It was funny because it actually happened almost at different points and different times. So basically in 2021, 2XU got the offer to be bought up by a company. And I was like, oh, exciting. Someone who wants to buy 2XU. What does this process look like? And at that time, it was mostly myself. I did have my virtual assistant at that time. And I was trying to figure out what that looked like, what that meant. And it was through that process, going through that process of a buyer inquiring about different documents, about different things, that I was like, hey, we're now at the point where we can technically sell the business, but we still have so many things we have to iron out. And that was kind of the switch over for me, was seeing what other companies would look at or look for when it comes to buying businesses, which was a whole other realm for me, and being able to understand what it looked like to actually really scale, to get 2XU out of just getting whatever client we would get through whatever net I just threw over, to being more intentional about what that growth would look like. And I really narrowed down on coaches and consultants, because a lot of the time, since they are the brand, they don't have anyone else running the admin, running the back end of it. They just keep running in circles, just like where I was basically when I started my own business. And of course, at that time, I also met with a lot of virtual assistant agency owners and how they were able to scale. So it got me a little bit more of something to look forward to, especially as I kept growing 2XU. Now, a few of the challenges I faced mostly was my own mindset and systems, basically, that I needed to be able to grow. At that point, 2XU at 2021, I think we had 20-something VAs, and I was still managing everyone, and also managing the clients at the same time. So it's a little bit of insanity there. And I got burnt out, which meant that my VAs also got burnt out, and more than half of those virtual assistants left, sadly. Some of them ended up still working with our clients years later, which is amazing. But some of them basically got burned out when I got burned out. So I kind of had to have this mindset of starting from scratch a little bit, where then I hired the very first virtual assistant manager for 2XU. At this point, we were switching a little bit from thinking of like, hey, hire your next virtual assistant with us, to now, hey, hire your next executive assistant with us. People who can actually focus on the outcomes, not just the tasks within your business. So at that time, now I had a manager, I had someone else taking care of the assistants. I didn't have to be the one running around like I had this chicken. Then I really focused a lot on the client journey. I focused a lot on the EA journey, and basically have been able in the last 3 years since that time, I've been able to just keep building 2XU up, where we now have like 30-something EAs, and more, because even though through the holidays we've still been hiring, which is amazing, but even through that whole process, we've still been able to keep our systems in check. And also my own mindset also had to keep kind of growing through what it meant for me to be a business owner versus just being a solopreneur, and what it meant for me to keep kind of getting the business to the point where it can run and grow without me. Now, next question. I'm just looking basically at the questions, like I said, that I would ask the agency owners who will be coming on here in the next several weeks, is what's one system, habit, or decision that made the biggest impact on scaling your agency? One side of it was reading the book Traction, and it's still the book that I will recommend to anyone who's trying to actively build a team around them. But the other one, honestly, was I had the mindset, and I got obsessed with it, that I wanted where my calendar only consisted of either creating content or basically getting clients. Those are the only two things that I wanted to focus on. So I knew that YouTube was becoming one of the main ways that we would get people through the process and the funnel. So I wanted to double down on that. And at the same time, I wanted to really hone my own sales skills when it came to talking to clients. I still don't want to delegate the sales side of 2XU, just because I do enjoy doing it. I enjoy being kind of the first person to help give clarity for people who are coming in. I still enjoy a lot of that process. So for me, I then started creating the systems around me to be able to focus on that. So I now have an amazing head of operations. The very first manager that we had in 2XU is now our head of operations. We have 4 other executive assistant managers underneath them. And we now have 2 other client success managers. We have someone who's managing the assistant systems, basically. So we've now basically really grown. And it really started with just traction, and then thinking, where else can I replace myself within the system so I can only really focus on content and getting clients. Then a question that I also got was, how did I switch from that mode, basically, of just delegation? And I think the biggest switch over for me was I didn't think of it as delegating the task. I was delegating the outcome. Instead of me, the outcome for me was making sure that all of the previous calls that I've done were followed up. The main outcome of that is making sure that we at least buy back any of the people that I already talked to and getting them to actually start working basically with 2XU. So I had to have my own mindset shifts of how I think about the things that I was doing basically as a task into an outcome, to build it into a system and then delegate it to someone else. Those are the three main components that I always think about of like, what is this task? What does this look like when it's done? Building it into a system and then delegating to the rest. The same kind of process that I keep having our own clients go through over and over as well. Now, a really good question is, how do you personally stay grounded while managing clients, team members, and growth pressures? And depending on the agency, because like I know different agencies where their businesses is more very much founder dependent, like their founder is more of the project manager and everything else trickles down. I guess for me, I think it really helps just because I am not the one who's always client facing. I'm only client facing at the very beginning and the rest is delegated. So it's easier for me to kind of hone down my strategic mindset of like, okay, how do we want to fix this? How can we prevent this moving forward? At the same time, how can we move forward? What does forward even look like? So for me, I had to kind of shift from me doing, I didn't have to go through the shift of me, I'm doing the work, I'm the one, making sure that these hours are fulfilled with clients. But that's usually the first shift that people have to go through anyway. And then it's making the shift of like, how can I make this into something that is not dependent on just one person, to shifting it to now I'm only focused on this. Like I said, I only wanted to focus on those two things. So I just kind of built everything else around that as well. And then when it comes to staying grounded, I keep in mind that without all of my amazing team, without all of our amazing EAs, I wouldn't have a business. So I always keep that in mind of like, how can I make their lives easier? How can I make their lives better? How can I make this smoother? How can I give them some sort of job security, even if a client leaves? I always think of that of like, I keep that in mind always, that everything that I'm doing, every single thing that I'm doing in 2XU is not just for the business to keep going. I'm doing it for the people, because for the people keeps the business going. I kind of always have that mindset in everything and whatever that I do. Now, if I had to give one piece of advice for agency owners as they're getting through or as they want to scale, basically, the main thing is basically those three things that I just talked to is audit yourself. Like, what are things that you're doing? What are things that you can either delegate or automate, build systems around it, and then delegate or automate it to someone else. So the main key part of that is, as agency owner, you're still a business owner. You're still a founder. You're still someone who's responsible for how the business grows, how the business goes. So for you have to keep that in mind as well, is that you still have to delegate. You still have to make sure that you're only focused on strategy, which is moving things forward, and then also thinking things through, of like building systems so if something happens, it doesn't have to happen again. So it's kind of just that mindset of ownership, that this is your business. No one else would really like do this as well as you could, just because that's the way things are. But you want to build systems around yourself, and you want to build the right people around yourself, because honestly, my life has been so much easier that I have the right people into XU. Our amazing team does what they need to do without me asking a lot of the time, because they take responsibility for how things are. I don't have to feel the pressure to keep having to show up as well, because they know that I'm there whenever they need me. Like, they don't have to they don't even have to really ask. They just know that I will show up. And that's kind of part of the trust and relationship that I've built with them in the last couple of years. So those are the two things: the systems, or auditing yourself, building out your systems, and then focusing a lot on your people, of building your people up, looking at always, how can I make this easier for you? How can I make this not happen again? How can we build systems so if this does happen to you again, we now have a solution for it. It doesn't have to be a question mark. And also just keeping yourself some slack, because growing a business is not for the faint-hearted. So keeping in mind that it is okay to take a break. It's okay to build systems around making sure you're not overwhelmed or you're not doing everything yourself as well. So, and usual favorite question on the Scale You podcast is, if you can scale yourself, you can multiply, grow myself more. I would attach that to 2XU, because 2XU started out as a goal and a dream to help young Filipinos work from home, whether that's getting them employed or teaching foreigners how to employ them so they can also work from home. So if I could just double that, if I could duplicate that, that's currently what I'm trying to do anyways. We're adding new services and offers into XU. just so we can keep creating more opportunities for Filipinos to be able to work from home. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of the Scale You podcast. I know it was mostly me. You can find out more. I have my book Scale You right there. You guys can check out the previous episodes. I will also link the playlist basically of the previous seasons, so you guys can check it out. It's currently housed on my older main channel basically, but you guys can basically check it out there. And if you guys liked this episode and excited for the next ones, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Comment below who you want to see on the next episodes. I would love to reach out to them. If you can put their LinkedIn profile, the better, so I don't have to keep hunting who this person is. And of course, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of the future episodes of the Scale You podcast coming up. And you can check out the latest video on the channel right here. Hope you guys have an amazing and wonderful day. And remember that small steps matters. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!